So hello and welcome to another edition of the High Tech Connect interview series. Today we are going to talk about the very hot debated topic right now. Is AI doomed, and can it even lead to extinction of mankind? This is really discussed out there by lots of experts, non-experts, and whoever else. Today we have certainly an expert here who can give some insights on that and his opinion. It's Professor Marc Bischoff. He was a professor of cognitive computing at Goldsmiths, University of London, and he's also, I think he's still scientific advisor to Facts 360. Hi and welcome, Marc. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, it's good to be here today. Yeah, just a little anecdote to tell you how I came to be a scientific advisor to Facts 360. I was leading a research team at Goldsmiths, and we were working on some really interesting work on insider threat. And all of a sudden, my entire team got up and left and spun out and formed a spin out. So I was left directing a research center with no employees.
Oh.
So faced with that, I also took the decision to leave and join Facts 360 in an advisory role. So that's how I came to be working for them.
Okay, cool. May you briefly introduce yourself? You have done lots of stuff. Just very briefly, a couple of sentences, what you have done.
Yeah, I'm a former chair. I guess in this context, what's most relevant is that I was elected to chair the Society for Artificial Intelligence and Simulation of Behaviour. That's a UK professional society for the study of AI. And interestingly, it's the oldest such society in the world.
Wow.
And I served a 4-year term as chair between 2010 and 2014. And during that time, the society held its most successful event ever, its 50th anniversary conference, which was held at Goldsmiths, where, coincidentally, I was involved in creating a very interesting play, at least in my opinion, about the life of Alan Turing, Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage. And that had its premiere at the conference and seemed to go down quite well. Okay. Because of my lifelong work, I've been working in AI for over half the time there's been a field of AI. I started work in the early 80s. And because of that experience, I am asked to advise on policy. I have been asked to advise at the UN, the European level, and at Westminster for the UK Parliament. Professionally, I'm best known for two things. One is in my doctoral work, I did outline the world's first swarm intelligence algorithm. That's a particular way about how you might build intelligent machines that takes inspiration from the world of insects and other animals that exhibit swarming behavior. That was called stochastic diffusion search. And most recently, I'm best well known, and I guess this is why you're reaching out, for my work on human and machine consciousness, where I developed a philosophical a priori argument. That means effectively that if the logic is correct, it's true, independent of anything that might happen in the world, that purports to show that if computation can bring forth phenomenal consciousness, that what it feels like to see the ineffable red of a rose, for example, if that is possible to do via some AI program, then it entails that a type of consciousness called panpsychism must also be true. And what we mean by that, it entails that everything, the chair that you're sitting on, the room that you're in, the car that you're driving, every open physical system must be conscious of every possible phenomenal sensation. Right. And that horn of the reductio is so absurd to most people, although to be fair, I have met people say, yeah, bring it on. I'm completely confident that my carpet is conscious. But most people reject that horn and thus are forced to reject the horn that computation can lead to consciousness. Right. And in a paper published a couple of years ago called Artificial Intelligence is Stupid and Causal Reasoning Cannot Fix It, I review this position alongside John Searle's Chinese room argument and the Penrose-Lucas argument on computational creativity to build what I think is a powerful case that there will always be a gap, a humanity gap, if you like, between that which we can achieve via computation and that which the human mind is capable of. And interestingly, that paper already ranks in the top 1% across all Frontiers journeys in terms of the most viewed papers. So it's really creating a little bit of a buzz amongst the journal reading public.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for this intro. So let's go a couple months back. I mean, you went in your career, as you clearly hinted, through some ups and downs of AI, right? Experienced these, I think, 2 of these winters or something. Now we have extremely hot summer, I would say, right? So when ChatGPT came out and and got adopted in record time by so many people, were you personally impressed or surprised, or how was your reaction?
Well, I've got to say that thanks to connections in the industry, I've had access to GPT-3 and large language models for longer than most. And that's given me a good chance to play with them. And I've got to say, despite my initial skepticism when I read about them, actually get your hands on and use them, yeah, I was impressed with what they could do. I'm impressed by their ability to generate very natural sounding conversations that kind of align with human intentions, much better than any other similar system that I've played with in the past. So the fact that they can respond contextually without human intervention, I think, is really impressive.
Right. Okay.
Nonetheless, we've got to be careful, because I'm sure we'll get a chance to explore this later in the conversation, but the underlying technology, the large language models, and specifically ChatGPT-3, has the potential to exhibit some very weird behaviors. You may have come across the so-called anomalous keyword phenomena discovered by Rumbelow and Wilson, where that ChatGPT-3 can be forced to respond incoherently or evade a prompt. Now, this isn't the so-called prompt engineering approach, where you design a very complex prompt to override the safeguards. This is just giving it certain words which cause erroneous behavior. And these behaviors can be insults, bizarre behaviors, mispronunciations, spelling different words, and they're just because a particular keyword's been entered, and that was quite an interesting fact. So yes, large language models are very impressive. As I hope we'll get a chance to explore. We need to keep our skeptical hat on when we're using them. Right.
Okay, so that actually was nearly my second question. So first of all, the excitement you're saying, as I understand, it's sort of justified, right? Even if you had the chance to look at it over some time, we're also surprised and impressed. So we have a check mark on that. So where will this technology foundation, large language models, diffusion models, transformers, these generative AI things, and stuff like RLHF, where will this truly lead us? What type of applications can we expect in the next couple of years? Because I also heard, even from the companies who developed all that, we're pretty much at the end now of things to expect. Is that true, or how far you think will bring us this, and what applications can we expect?
Well, first of all, let's look at why ChatGPT-3 so took off. It is a step change over GPT-3 and GPT-2. And there are some technological reasons why that's the case, not least the inclusion of reinforcement learning into the overall architecture. That effectively kind of gives ChatGPT-3 a form of agency, if you like, in machine learning, guiding its actions to maximize future rewards. But again, we've got to underscore that these machines can and have been made to spout nonsense, and we need to be careful. So what's interested me is how Microsoft have so readily leapt into bed with this technology. I think it's kind of as if people are not learning from history. Are you familiar? I don't know whether your audience will be familiar with the 20 disaster that happened to Microsoft in 2016. And that disaster was called Tay, which was an interactive learning chatbot that Microsoft released into the Twitter sphere. Now, you can guess what happened. Within a few days, this chatbot was spouting racist, homophobic nonsense.
It's well known. Yeah, of course, it was taken off, right?
It was taken off. But Microsoft engineers, being modest kind of chaps and girls, said, never mind, we'll soon fix this and we'll get version 2 up within a few days, which they did. And again, version 2 was immediately hacked to spout more of the same. When you put these systems, which have got zero understanding, this is my controversial claim. It's not that these systems haven't quite got human understanding. My core claim in the philosophy of mind is that they have no understanding. And because these systems have no understanding of what they do, ingenious humans who are interacting them can easily force them to do things their designers didn't even consider. So Tay was forced to produce homophobic nonsense. We've already seen prompt engineering forcing large language models to spout offensive nonsense. Now, given that, I'm kind of surprised that Microsoft, and given what happened to Microsoft, it was immense reputational damage when Tay came out. It wasn't a minor story, it was a big story across the world. So it's kind of bizarre to me that Microsoft have so readily embedded this technology across their Office productivity suite of tools, Office, PowerPoint. Now, yes, I've been using them. I've been using ChatGPT-3 independent of Microsoft to do exactly the kind of things that Microsoft's integration is leading users to do. So we can summarize text, we can use systems like Stable Diffusion to design interesting backdrops or illustrations to my slide, etc., etc. Just the sort of use cases that Microsoft wants. But the point is, I'm electing to do that. If it goes wrong, that's no reputational damage to Microsoft. If, on the other hand, we're asking Word to summarize a company report and it gets it wrong, or predict something about a company and it gets it wrong, and that's going in my company's slide, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know where the legal ground of responsibility is finally going to lie. But at the very least, it will cause reputational damage again to Microsoft if it can be shown that their tools have negatively impacted a company's presentation or documentation. So I am very surprised that this is almost as though Microsoft hasn't learned from what's happened in the past. Now, when you couple that with the large-scale redundancies around the world amongst big tech, this is not just Microsoft; it's Microsoft, Google, and the rest. Their ethics teams, their boards of ethical responsibility have been much pared down or completely dissolved away. So we're getting, at the same time that people are very rapidly rolling this stuff out, we're getting a reduction in the oversight of this technology in companies. And that, to me, doesn't sound a very safe way to proceed.
Right. But yeah, indeed, that's what you could hear about people from the ethics department being among the ones who have been laid off now with this last wave, and some departments they have let go pretty much everyone. Do you have any explanation for that? Was this sort of already decided half a year ago, and then they did it, and now they would actually need these people, or is it even evil to get rid of these people, to not have people criticizing what you're doing right now? What's your take?
There was a telling quote from the Microsoft CEO, and embarrassingly, I've forgotten their name, that said something along the lines of these boards were inhibiting the rollout of inhibiting the development of technology. They were serving as a block to technology.
Right. Okay.
And good on them. That's exactly what their role should be, a cautionary oversight role. But this didn't go down, given that we're living in a time where things are changing really, really quickly. And I guess Microsoft and Google have found themselves caught between a rock and a hard place. If they do nothing, their competitors stand to gain control of the market, as OpenAI effectively has done with the incredibly quick adoption of its ChatGPT-3 technology. So if they're cautious, they stand to lose. If they go fast, they stand to have big problems ahead. What do you do in that environment? It's clearly a difficult business decision.
Okay. Yeah. So okay, no answers to that. Well, one would have to speak to a Microsoft person in private, I guess. Now, the last few weeks, we have also seen 2 public letters going out, which was very surprising as well, I think, to everyone, certainly to me. One letter was first calling for regulation. That's maybe not so surprising, but of course, if a company who can profit from that, it sounds first surprising. And then the second one was quite short, but sort of shocking. So one should stop AI or put regulations so that AI might not extinct all of mankind. What is your take on these letters, and what were you thinking about it? And are you? I didn't look at it. Have you even signed one of these letters, or are you opposing this? What's your take on these 2 things?
No, I haven't signed one of these 2 letters. There might be a third letter to join your cohort soon, which I am involved with.
I see.
And that's effectively protesting the first 2. Yeah, in April this year, the Future of Life Institute released an open letter calling for a pause in the training of large language models more powerful than GPT-4 for at least 6 months, with public and verifiable accountability, although they don't outline how that is going to happen. That letter, rightly, in my opinion, emphasizes the needs for AI developers and users and marketers to focus on the reliability of their systems, their accuracy, their safety, and their bias, etc., and privacy, all the things good things. The issue with the letter, in my opinion, is that I've been involved for over 10 years with an NGO called ICRAC. That's the International Committee for Robot Arms Control. And one of the things I learned, I was co-opted onto the committee as an expert on AI. And during my tenure on the committee, one of the things I've learned is that when you're working, the committee's invited to petition every year at Geneva, the UN meeting on Geneva, on the meetings on conventional and unconventional weapons. And one of the key things I take upon to me is that when you're looking for it to ban something, like we're looking to ban the use of autonomous weapons or weapons that kill without human intervention in the control loop, you need to have a mechanism where any treaty can be verified. Without a means of verification, you're effectively virtue signaling, and that's my concern with that first letter. They don't outline how it's proposed to stop anyone in China, in Russia, in America, a private citizen with a lot of money and a lot of GPUs. Or there are also new technologies, by the way, new algorithms for building large language models that are much more computationally efficient than the ones used in GPT-3. So the thing is it just smacks of hand waving to me, because it isn't clear to me that anyone is going to be able to verify such a thing. So it is just virtue signaling from those involved, and to be deplored for that. It's good that we bring into the public domain discussions about privacy, accuracy, safety, and all these other factors. But to pretend that we can control them, or that companies will, even if they say they are, unless we can definitely verify that they're doing that, is just nonsense. And furthermore, it's pernicious nonsense for a reason I'm going to come on to in a second, because I just want to come to the second letter, which was from the Centre the Putative Centre for AI Safety. What the hell that is, I'm not too sure. This was claiming that there's a danger that humanity could be made extinct within 2 years by AI. Now, in the one hand, there's a trivial sense in which that might be the case. When you embed any software in a complex system like the control of a nuclear reactor, or for that matter, the control of intercontinental ballistic missiles or nuclear warheads on, there's always the slight chance that the software might go wrong, and by some combination, some conjunction of the spheres, a horrendous accident happen that might cause a nuclear explosion or Armageddon. So
a fatal bug, right? So
a fatal bug. So yeah, it's a yes. There's a very small chance that the software can be bugged and something horrible might happen that might cause extinction. But I don't think that's what the letter writers mean. They've clearly read a little bit too much bad sci-fi, and it seems to me they're imagining some Terminator coming seeking to destroy all of mankind, which is utter garbage. It's garbage for two very simple and clear reasons. One, these systems don't understand, and they are not phenomenally conscious. When I use the word phenomenally, I'm using it in a technical philosophical context. I mean this sensation. They aren't aware of the sensation of what it is like to be. So the sensation of what blue looks like or pain looks like. The computation has never had, does not have now, nor never can have any phenomenal consciousness. It doesn't feel anything. So in the absence of any feel, then how a system could then go on to have intrinsic desire? If all activities are equally neutral, why favor one activity over another? Why would a Terminator have any teleology, any goal-directed behavior of its own, let alone a goal-directed to wipe out a goal to wipe out humanity? It's utter garbage. So I think both of those letters are just worth binning. The former letter, why I said that is pernicious, is because just look at the people who signed it. I think second on the list, if I remember correctly, was Sam Altman from OpenAI. Now, when these people sign these letters, I kind of think it's almost akin to market manipulation by when companies sign these letters, because they're saying, oh my God, AI is so dangerous and so big. It reinforces a false public narrative that these things really are clever. So by in signing the letter and getting loads of notables to sign it, it's kind of like free advertising for companies like Google, OpenAI, and Microsoft. It's manipulating the discourse in favor of these commercial companies. And I think there's something distasteful when companies do that, because it's not like an advert you see on the TV. It's done in a very pernicious and underhand and sly way. The people that benefit from this are the big tech companies from these letters. So they don't achieve anything, and you've got to look at who benefits, and it's the people who sign them. So I think there's something particularly unpleasant about that.
Okay,
so that's why you won't find my signature on it.
I hear you. But one question here I have, I mean, there are proven AI and with high reputation researchers signing this as well. Have they been misused, or are they also profiting some way, or why are they signing this?
I think they're signing it for very good reasons. Many people in the world of AI who are concerned, have concerns about AI being used that's riddled with bias. For example, by the police, if we get careless use of AI profiling or AI image retrieval. That's not to say such technology is useless, but it does have risk, and people need to be aware of that risk when they deploy it and use it extremely carefully and try to mitigate that risk as much as is humanly possible. So people have concerns about privacy, about bias, copyright, for example, in the training of these large language models. There'll be some interesting cases going through the courts fairly soon, I imagine, because we've already seen. You can see the artistic tastes of people who design these things come through by the way they things like Stable Diffusion creates art. There's a very heavy Roger Dean-ness about the science fantasy images they tend to.
You already have lawsuits going on there,
there's potentially copyright issues going through. Nonetheless, people are right to flag those areas of interest, and I think the AI researchers are just. Sorry, my Alexa's decided to interrupt our podcast, but Alexa's trying to sabotage our discussion on AI, and that's something quite interesting in its own right. So God,
here we go. So the folks are listening. But I'm not sure if you answered the question. So AI researchers are concerned, but then you have made very clear that what you think about these two letters. they didn't see that. I mean, you usually don't sign something that another reputable expert like yourself finds garbage, but I'm a bit puzzled, so I don't know. Of course, it gives big credibility to these letters with these names on it. At least that's what, of course, the other folks are intent. So anyway, I was a bit surprised myself.
Let's look at the second letter and unpick that. If you seriously believe an AI is going to seek world domination, then you've got to tell me why. Extinction, why is that going to happen? What's going to motivate a mere mechanical device? Let's not forget it. I think people are too often seduced by the fact that computers these days are usually electrical, and they see some coarse metaphorical analogy between, well, the brain's electrical, and that's big and complex, and the computers are electrical. Therefore, we can upload our brain into the computer to take another death-denying fantasy from the likes of Elon Musk. No. These machines are mechanical. Their actions are entirely predicted by their algorithms, the algorithms that underpin them, and they have no consciousness at all. So, as I mentioned, if we haven't got if a machine can't feel pleasure or pain, to put it in really simple terms, why would one course of action be preferable over another? It just seems farcical to me. And again, the product of reading too much science fiction. This is, I think, I've taught AI for many decades, and one of the things that got me interested in AI was reading science fiction as a kid. So I'm aware of that danger. Arthur C. Clarke wrote some very interesting stories about AI and about virtual reality back in the 50s, Against the Fall of the Night, The City and the Stars, that predated a kind of Muskian idea of uploading our mind into a computer, and the idea that computation can give rise, the false idea that computation can give rise to conscious sensation. So it's embedded within the AI literature. But I think we need to step back to get onto a bigger philosophical platform. In the 70s and 80s, AI really was the only game in town when it came to thinking about the mind. So if you rejected computational theories of the mind, it seemed to many that you were adopting some kind of Mysterian view of the mind, saying that perhaps there was a soul there, or you were taking a religious view. So I know when I presented my arguments that show computation can't realize consciousness, which I've done at nearly all the major UK universities and quite a few in Europe and the US now, they initially met with a fair degree of hostility, because a lot of people, it's a foundational aspect of their world ontology. These people like to think of themselves, who believe in such fairy tales, as being hardcore scientists, and they see the other side as hardcore religious people, or people with very way out spiritual beliefs. And yet cognitive science has moved on an awful lot in the last 50 years. People are looking at this as though computation is the only explanation of the mind. It's not. There's a whole world of new cognitive science that takes the body seriously. And it seems to me, rather, that the people who believe in the idea that the mind can be abstracted from the body, that this is a fundamentally dualist perspective. We're saying the mind is different from the body. It's defined by some abstract computation. Get the computation right, put it in your computer, and you can move your mind to another device. That to me is a fundamentally dualist and Mysterian perspective. My perspective, which is I think the mind is firmly rooted in the body. When my body dies, kaput. It seems to me fairly straightforward, utterly scientific, very measurable, with no appeal to anything mysterious. But so the irony of the debate is that many people who perceive themselves to be real hardcore cold scientists, that have this strange addiction to the idea that the mind can be abstracted from the body, are themselves populating and promoting a very mysterious view about the mind indeed.
Okay, yeah, thanks for this excursion. So the first letter you said has good intentions and has things in there that you can share. It's basically calling for regulation. What is your take on this? How should AI, if at all, be regulated? Should there be, like the EU has now brought out the EU AI Act? Should this be done through them, for example, or some calling, of course, similar folks for self-regulation? Should be a combination of that, or is there maybe a third way of doing it, or not doing anything at all and let it play out? What's your take on that, on regulating the AI in general? What we have, which is going on at the moment? Yeah.
Well, I think it was April or May that there was published the amendments to the proposed EU AI Act. And I'm broadly in favour of this legislation, as long as it doesn't stifle innovation too much, and I don't really see that it is. I see no evidence that it is doing that. I was initially, by the way, wrongly seduced by a letter I saw, a post I saw on LinkedIn that said this act was going to make it impossible for companies to access LLMs via APIs and all sorts of nonsense. It does no such thing. So I think in general, regulation about data and about privacy and about the use of software is good. So for those of us in Europe, well, I'm not, unfortunately, of course I am. Unfortunately, England is Britain is no longer in Europe. But for those people fortunate enough to be in Europe, you have the GDPR, which I think is now a well-trialed and robust piece of legislation. Legislation that I was indeed asked to comment on in Westminster in the House of Lords in the UK, looking at how the GDPR addressed issues around data. So I have a little familiarity with that, and I think it does a very good job. That's well established. Even though the UK has left Europe, our data protection legislation is still very closely aligned with the GDPR. The proposed amendments to the EU Act, I think, I can't say I've read them closely. This is just some looking at précis of this material, but what it's seeking to do is harmonise rules for AI across economic areas in Europe and elsewhere. That seems to be a good thing. So we're all batting off the same playing field. It's looking to bring its goal is to bring the benefits of AI to lots of different user groups across Europe, which has got to be good. It's looking to ensure fairness in the deployment of AI, protect the privacy of individuals, and respect copyright, blah, blah, blah. So it's got all the right intentions as far as I'm concerned. I'm not an expert on it, and I haven't read the act in its entirety, but I believe it to be motivated by good.
Right. So you think that that's the right approach, and you're happy with this, and that's all that is needed if they continue doing a good job. Okay. So where is AI then? Let's the large language models and generative AI aside. I mean, there's more to AI that you know very well. Are we seeing some other big breakthrough in the next coming years? Something that you would expect and if so, what would that be? Do you see anything on the horizon?
Well, first of all, I really think it's important to say that, so self-professed experts like myself are not always the best at predicting what's going to happen in AI. I genuinely didn't see the power of transformers and of large language models and how they would so revolutionize the world of AI. I've been working in the field, as I said, since 1980. So a really niche topic. If you were at a party, I would never say what I did. It was an immediate conversation killer.
Okay, now you're the rock star.
And now everybody's got an opinion about AI. It's just astonishing how the zeitgeist has changed. And this is, I think, due to the amazing behaviours of these large language models. So if you're asking me where things are going to go, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I didn't see LLMs on the horizon, and I have no idea what the next big thing is going to be. What I can say is I can look at the use cases for LLMs, and I think there's some really interesting ones. I think we need to be careful. I would caution against using LLMs in areas like loan assessments, for argument's sake, without very careful oversight, or control of a nuclear power station or a plane or something that has extreme high risk attached to it, unless they've been incredibly robust verification and testing procedures. But I think there are some natural, really good use cases for this technology. in our own company, Fact 360, we've been looking at how to use large language models might be used for entity extraction, for better sentiment analysis of text and things like that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the critics of AI said, when people claim, I've just been bigging up this technology, but it's interesting that a very simple use case has been, we have yet to see a large language model being able to robustly filter out hate speech on Facebook or similar platforms. So when people say, wow, they're really great, well, isn't it weird that the companies who invented them, who've known this technology for years, haven't been able to deploy them at scale to get rid of nasty speech?
Yeah.
They can't. All right. I don't think that they can't do it now, and I'll bet you that in 2 years' time, there still won't have done it unless something new comes along that's tailored to that application area. So, yes, I can describe how I use them in my workflow. I use LLMs for coding, for small segments of code. If I want to write, particularly if I've got to write something in a language I'm not that familiar with. For libraries, interrogating libraries and APIs, so I don't have to bother remembering loads of nonsense about how to use particular things. I just ask LLMs, and they're pretty good at that. I think they've been hard engineered to be good at it by lots of human trading, but that's another story, by people who get paid very little. But nonetheless, that's things I use them for. I daily use these devices to summarize material for me. I daily use Stable Diffusion and its ilk to create images if I need an image for something. These are just easy things. In business, it seems to me, I'm not involved in this world, but I can imagine that because of their great ability to align conversation to human intention better than anything that's gone before, I can see use cases in first layer human interactions in telephone marketing and call centers. Things like that would seem to be ripe for this with appropriate oversights. But so I'm not. I haven't got a magic hat, and I can't predict what will happen. All I know is that as long as the API we've got access to use these things, which we have at the moment, there's millions of great people like yourself with good ideas about what to do, and I'm sure we'll see a plethora of exciting things emerge over the next few years. Yeah,
we have seen a lot of work. Productivity improvements that of course called, and that's maybe a topic I also want to briefly touch with you on. Have people said that this will cost lots and lots of jobs, talking about hundreds of millions. Not sure if you have an opinion about it. You said multiple times that you cannot predict this or something, and still what any opinion on that? If not, then fair enough.
In 2016, the guy who genuinely has claimed to be one of the towering figures of AI and neural networks in particular, Jeff Hinton, he made the prediction that deep learning would surpass radiologists within 5 years.
Yeah, infamous statement.
2023. That hasn't happened yet, and I see no evidence that it will.
I think it alienated the whole healthcare system there, and now they are very slowly adopting it.
Absolutely. And in 2014, Elon Musk began his annual crusade to tell us every year that level 5 automation was going to be happening next year. It hasn't happened yet. In both cases, my reaction that I described in that paper, Artificial Intelligence is Stupid, my response to these, is because the AI doesn't understand, right? A radiographer understands they're looking at an X-ray or an image, some kind of sensed image of the human body or human anatomy if they're dealing with humans. And they understand how that body works, and they bring together all that knowledge when they're interpreting that image. Similarly, when we sit behind the wheel and we drive a car, we bring our understanding of the world. So that's why when I see a lorry carrying a load of traffic lights in the back of the lorry, I'm not confused, and yet Elon Musk's Tesla cars famously were. because I have an understanding of what happens in the world and what's likely to happen and what's not.
Right.
So I'm wary that I take a more sanguine view about AI. Let's put it that way. I've seen over the decades prophets of doom saying, "Oh, the prophets of glory," because there's two interpretations of job losses. One says this is terrible; you're going to financially disempower vast swathes of humanity. But the poet Richard Brautigan in the 60s had a different interpretation. That's we can free mankind from horrible, useless jobs, and it will be a liberating thing. I've got to confess, I tend to take the more cynical view that if AI could replace people, it would be to people's disadvantage rather than it to being the birth of a modern utopia. But my own view is more sanguine. I tend to think that AI will be used as an adjunct to humans, so that it will, from the employer's point of view, so it will better improve my productivity. So I see AI being used to improve human productivity more than replace humans in the leap. Eventually, there will be some jobs that go due to AI. There are not many people who do draftsmen, at least in the developed world now, using set squares and protractors and compasses. We tend to do our technical drawing on computers, so that skill is a skill that's not with us anymore. And I'm sure AI, over time, there will be areas that are current human skills that are no longer needed, but then I think it will bring itself new areas of skill. So I tend to be fairly optimistic or reasonably positive that AI, it will just make companies get more productivity out of its employees rather than replace them.
Okay, great. Coming to an end, maybe final question, but if you could keep it short, because otherwise we need to do another call. What are you currently working on? You already gave some stuff, but what is your passion these days? What are your projects that you're after these days?
Okay, well, I'm working with this company called Fact360, and what Fact360 do is use AI and a particular technology called transactional analytics as a way of abstracting data from corporation channels that can be used post-event if you've had some fraud going on to help you find the bad actors. So it can be used by investigators post some crimes been committed to try and work out say we work on very large cases where you've got tens of millions of electronic communications and you're trying to find evidence of bad action happening in that.
Okay.
And we can do that very quickly. But you can also use our technology live to give early warning when it looks like people's motivations, employee motivations are changing. And the way that we do that, in a nutshell, I think is really beautiful. We don't need to scan message contents. We do it by looking at a technical traffic analysis, looking at the who, why, what, and where of human communications. And it's a technology that was developed initially in the Second World War at Bletchley Park by a guy called Gordon Welshman, who looked at he didn't try to decode German codes, but he just looked at when a message was sent from A to B and derived intelligence from that, as opposed to Alan Turing, and more people are familiar with, who looked at decoding the Enigma ciphers. Right. Now, the astonishing thing is, I mean, basically all Turing's work now is in the public domain. It's not under the Official Secrets Act anymore. Most of Welshman's work still is under the UK Official Secrets Act. And that's because I believe it's used across the world by intelligence services who want to get intelligence without actually looking at the semantics of what people are saying. So that's what we've done. We've reinvented the wheel. We've got an engine that can work with encrypted messages or messages in any language, because we're not interested in the semantics of the message. We're just interested in when, where, and to whom, and why a message was sent. In other words, the metadata around the message. We can derive incredible information from that. Just to wrap, one of the things that blew my mind when we trialed this at first, we were able to predict, given the widely available Enron corpus of emails, when people had got promoted, when they were being pushed out of the loop of control on the Enron board, without looking at a single message. You wouldn't believe it possible you could do that. This technology can.
I see. Looks like doing similar things as Palantir, but using different approach, different technology, so sounds very exciting.
Well, they're in the space, like Darktrace. There's another company working in this space.
Right. Okay, cool. Thanks so much, Marc, for sharing your opinion. Really enjoyed talking to you. All the best to you, and let's hope that the EU AI Act is all we need, and that I'm waiting for the third letter. Then that one, I guess, you have signed as well, right? So
it's apparently in the process. There's a body, an August body, who are working on this now. I'm waiting to see whether it does actually see the light of day. But yeah, I've indicated my support for it.
All right, great. Thanks
Thank
again
you for the invitation.
Sure. Okay. You take care. Bye bye. Cheers.
Bye.